Morning, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Mike's MMA Picks Fight Morning Quick Card Breakdown Show, brought to you by BetDSI as well as MMA Oddsbreaker. UFC Brasilia, the only sport in town. Mixed martial arts. We have the COVID-19 pandemic taking over, and this might be a nice respite for a few hours on ESPN+. So let's kick things off. First fight of the day. Fights kick off at 3 p.m. Eastern time, so you want to make sure that you get your DraftKings lineups in, as well as the launch of FanDuel MMA. First fight of the day, Veronica Macedo taking on Maia-Burns. Maia-Burns coming in at 7,100 in DraftKings, plus 134 underdog. Believe it or not, 1-0 professional fighter, and here she is on the grandest stage. Taking on Veronica Macedo, we know her fairly well. She's been around the block in the UFC, only 24 years of age, 9,100 in DraftKings, minus 154 favorite. Huge size difference when you watch the weigh-in square off. Macedo has the better ground game by leaps and bounds, but the Swedish Muay Thai fighter has the better stand-up. Interestingly enough, though, the Swedish Muay Thai fighter fighting out of Fortis MMA ended up winning by submission in her last fight out against Duda Santana by rear naked choke. Macedo, she's going to have to find a way to get this fight to the ground and lock up a submission. That's her path to victory here. I was concerned about the change in weight classes. She's going back up to 135 pounds where she started her UFC career. Now, Macedo, I was reading that she was hospitalized for 2 months. She was out of commission trying to get back to 125 pounds. And this is somebody who's coming off of a win against Polyana Viana. So this may come back to haunt her, but she just doesn't like cutting weight. We'll see what happens. My pick here is going to be Veronica Macedo. Next up, we have men's 125-pound fighters. We've got Bueno Silva taking on David Dvorak. David Dvorak fighting out of the Czech Republic. 17-3 overall record. This guy has 20 fights under his belt, making his UFC debut coming in on short notice. Minus 117, favorite over at BetDSI, $8,000 at DraftKings. Taking on Bueno Silva. We know Bueno Silva. He has been roommates with Henry Cejudo for a number of years now. Bueno Silva, 8,200 in DraftKings, minus 103 at the betting window. Bueno Silva, black belt in jiu-jitsu. Can get sloppy on the feet. Has a nice kicking game. He'll want to take this fight to the ground. Dvorak will have a 2-inch reach advantage in this fight. What I've liked out of Dvorak is you can see him. He's a competent striker, solid boxing, solid sprawls, distance management, looks decent in the clinch, can throw leg kicks. I haven't seen him much on his back, though, and that's a concern of mine. Initially, before I started digging into the tape, I watched a few of Dvorak's fights, and I thought to myself, I don't see many holes in this kid's game. And at 27 years old and 20 fights under his belt, he may be a finished product. Then I went and watched Bueno Silva's tape, and he was able to have some success against Taha on the ground. He, in previous fights, has had success on the ground. Looks to throw power punches, and his last fight against Silva was up at 135 pounds, so he's cutting down, and this Silva doesn't have much muscle mass. I'm not sure if he's going to be able to control Dvorak and put him on his back. So the volume striking, I believe, is going to be the factor here in this fight. I know it takes place in Brazil. This fight's taking place in an empty arena, so you take the crowd out of it. I have a feeling that is going to impact some of the judging in this card. So I'm swayed slightly to David Dvorak. He's going to be my pick. Next up, third fight. We have Bueno Silva taking on Moroz. Oh gosh. Miss Moroz, you want to watch a fight that'll put you to sleep. Watch her fight against Danielle Taylor. I still cannot get that scrap out of my head. Moroz coming in at 7,700 plus 128 underdog. Had an impressive win over Mazo in her last fight. Silva, 8,500 in DraftKings. I do think that's a bit of a high price tag for her. Minus 148 at the betting window. Silva, 28 years old now. Both of these fighters, 28 years old. Silva, aggressive on the feet. Submitted Jillian Robertson last time out, which was impressive, and she did it while she was injured. She got caught in an ankle lock. This fight, Moroz, when you watch her fight, she's throwing volume and she's making grunting sounds. I do think the judges take that into account, unfortunately, and this is going to be an empty arena, so you're going to hear her loud and clear. Silva, hometown, Sao Paulo. I have a hunch that she's going to be the more aggressive fighter trying to close distance. I have concerns about Silva's gas tank, though. I'm concerned she may gas out in this fight. Give me Silva. Not very confident pick, but give me Silva to win this fight by decision. Next up, we have the fourth fight of the event. We've got Rani Yahya taking on Enrique Barzola. Barzola dropping down to 135 pounds here. AKA fighter, comes out of a solid camp. Barzola, 8,700. Has a tendency to rack up takedowns in his fights, but he can also be a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde type of fighter. I think this might be the right weight class for him, but I'd like to see him perform at that weight class before delivering a final judgment on him. 30 years old. This is another fighter who has, now this is going to be his 23rd professional fight under his belt. So he is on the verge of becoming a finished product. We know what he brings to the table. Outmuscled by Movsar Evliov last time out. Has a win over Bobby Moffitt. Though you watch the Aguilar fight and you wonder, as far as game plan goes, sometimes he can stray away from that, and you see fighters who they get away from their strengths. And I think he's going to want to keep this fight standing against Yahya, who is fighting out of ATT. There are a ton of fighters. I believe there are 8 fighters from ATT on this card today. Yahya, 7,500 in DraftKings, plus 165 underdog. Yahya, 35 years of age. You look up and down his resume, he's fought the who's who at the lower weight classes. Fought Chad Mendes back in the day, Joseph Benavidez, and others. You watch the fight against Ricky Simon, and Ricky Simon had a great gas tank, kept distance, kept shucking Yahya off anytime he tried to get close. And I think Barzola is going to try to do the same. He does not want to engage on the ground with Yahya, who could lock up a submission at any point. Yahya does not throw volume, so that is going to be an advantage in Barzola's favor. He won't have to do much to win this fight. He's got to stay at distance, and he's got to land volume. Much easier said than done, though. Yahya could lock up a submission at any point. Minus 155 that this fight goes to the distance. Give me Barzola, although minus 190 at this juncture is too high of a price to pay. Next up, we head to the welterweight division where we have Zaleski-Kunchenko, who's coming in at 7,800 plus 109 underdog at BetDSI, who suffered his first loss. So he's 20 wins, 1 loss. Lost to Li Jingliang. Ah, man, this coffee's so good. Last time out. Zaleski dos Santos is on the other side of the fight here. Zaleski dos Santos, a bit of a wild man. Can go the distance if he has to. 8,400 for Zaleski dos Santos, minus 129 favorite. Zaleski dos Santos lost his fight last time out to Li Jingliang. Kunchenko lost to Gilbert Burns last time out. I apologize for my error there. Kunchenko, Burns came in on short notice and got the job done. Zaleski dos Santos got finished late in the 3rd round. Disturbing trend of events. I was at Zaleski dos Santos' fight against Lyman Good a couple years ago. We have fighters who have takedown deficiencies here. Dos Santos has the better jiu-jitsu. Kunchenko, he seems like he coasts at times, and I think that may cost him in this fight. Kunchenko coming into enemy territory here in Brazil. Zaleski, what I see happening here is this fight, we're going to have the envelope pushed late 2nd round, early 3rd round, and Zaleski dos Santos is going to come through. Closely lined fight. Dos Santos, in my eyes, has more in the tank, although he was finished in his last fight. I think him traveling all the way to China was the issue in that matchup. I was impressed with Kunchenko's fight against Yushin Okami, but Yushin Okami doesn't present the same challenges that Dos Santos does. Dos Santos 21-6 record. Closely lined fight, not touching it from a wagering perspective, but give me Zaleski dos Santos. Next up, we have Amanda Ribas taking on Randa Markos at 115 pounds. Amanda Ribas, 8-1 overall record, 9,300 in DraftKings, minus 355 favorite. Taking on Randa Markos, who is a UFC veteran, 6,900 plus 290 underdog. Last time out we saw Ashley Yoder put up a heck of a fight against Randa Markos. Randa Markos landing the straighter punches and had success late. She was having trouble in the grappling department. In my eyes, this fight is going to hit the ground. Randa Markos, strong wrestler, but she's getting up there in age, 34 years old, coming into enemy territory in Brazil. Quickness should be a huge factor in this fight. Ribas does have some judo along with her jiu-jitsu, which is the jiu-jitsu is extremely high level. We saw the fight against Mackenzie Dern, who was coming off of her pregnancy. Wiped the floor with Mackenzie Dern. This spot, I do believe Ribas is the rightly favorite. I don't think it's worth playing her at over minus 300, though. Give me Amanda Ribas to win this fight via volume-based decision. Next up, we head to the men's 125-pound division again. We've got Jussier Formiga taking on Brandon Moreno. Brandon Moreno, last time out, saw him fight against Kai Kara-France. And basically, the reach, the grittiness, and his volume towards the end of the fight won him that bout. 7,400 for Moreno. I expect him to be one of the more popular underdogs on this card. Plus 140 underdog. Only $7,400 at DraftKings now. Formiga, 8,800. Minus 160 favorite. Formiga, not the prettiest fighter in there when he's grinding out decisions and looking for submissions. Although if you roster him and he's made his way onto the back of an opponent, it's got to be a good feeling for you as a Formiga backer. We saw his fight against Figueiredo. He was able to avoid the power of Figueiredo, put him on his back, and control him the entire fight. Formiga's starting to get up there in age, 34 years of age. Moreno has a 3-inch reach advantage. This fight, Moreno is going to have to do whatever he can to try to stay at distance and use his 3-inch reach. Formiga is going to be looking to close and find his way to the back. Moreno does not have a great get-up game, and we watch. As far as recency bias goes, I think people put a little bit too much stock into his win over Kai Kara-France. I was happy to see Moreno went to LFA and came back. I'm going to be picking Moreno in this spot. I have a feeling the distance, the striking at distance, is going to pay dividends. Formiga, though, if this fight gets to the ground, be worried. Third round, though, I have a feeling we're going to see Moreno start to pour it on and throw the kitchen sink at Formiga. Similar to the Austin Hubbard-Madsen fight last weekend. Next up, we have an aging veteran. The age of Francisco Trinaldo is in question here. He supposedly is 41 years of age, taking on John Makdessi. John Makdessi, UFC veteran as well. Makdessi coming in 7,300 in DraftKings, plus 145. Underdog, 34 years of age for Makdessi. Technical striker, 17-6 record. Canadian fighter. Francisco Trinaldo, 24-7 these days. 8,900 for Trinaldo. I do see this fight going to decision at minus 185. Minus 170 favorite for Trinaldo. Southpaw. Trinaldo, we've seen he's willing to go life and death with fighters. We saw it in the Kevin Lee fight. We saw it in the Bobby Green fight. Makdessi, I wish we got to see him take on Nasrat Haqparast. That fight doesn't look like it's coming to fruition. Here in this spot, though, I just think that Trinaldo is too difficult to break, and that he's going to be landing the harder punches in these exchanges. Although Makdessi's he's the more technical fighter, and he's going to look to get in and get out and pepper Trinaldo with strikes, try to frustrate him. I don't think it's going to be effective. I'm going to be picking Trinaldo to win this fight in Brazil in front of no one. We've got a slobber knocker on our hands up next on the main card. 205 pounds, Nikita Krylov taking on Johnny Walker. Nikita Krylov, 7,600 in DraftKings, plus 120 underdog. Krylov somehow only 27 years of age, yet has a wealth of experience against legitimate competition. He was in a really tough fight against Glover Teixeira last time out. Johnny Walker, 27 years old, still raw, 8,600 in DraftKings, minus 140 underdog. I mean, minus 140 favorite. I don't think the move to TriStar is going to work out for him as far as implementing a safe game plan. There is no safe game plan against Nikita Krylov. He's typically he typically doesn't make it out of the first round of his fights. And you can say the same for Johnny Walker as well. Johnny Walker, extremely explosive. The Serkinov fight, the Ledet fight, the Khalil Roundtree fight. Big reach advantage here for Johnny Walker. 6'5". Krylov, I'll be honest, he looks like he's still growing into his frame and into his body. I think they rushed him as far as getting into the UFC. So the way I see this fight playing out, the Corey Anderson fight, that was nothing new. As far as Johnny Walker goes, he's been beaten like that before, and his striking defense is a major deficiency. And I believe, although there's word that he's a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, I am hesitant to put any stock into that until I see him performing on the ground. I know Nikita Krylov can perform on the ground. Remember, you can't trust what you haven't seen. Nikita Krylov has been in a number of wars before. He's been into the fire, and although this is a very high variance fight and you probably want a portion of this in your portfolio in a DFS slate, I'm going to be picking Krylov, the underdog, to win. And I think plus 120 maybe the right price to pay. Fight doesn't go the distance, minus 590 right now. It opened at minus 300. Next up, men's lightweight division. You heard that correctly, lightweight division. Macedo-Moicano moving up to lightweight. 13-3-1 record. Moicano, 9,400 in DraftKings. I believe he's your highest priced fighter on the card. Minus 365 favorite, taking on Damir Hadzovic, the Bosnian bomber, 6,800 and plus 300 underdog. Hadzovic, what I've noticed about him when I watch his fights, anytime he fights a higher level of competition, he falters. And he has one saving grace, and that is his power. This is a former bodybuilder who is looking to strike, and he's going to have to catch Moicano here because Moicano has him beat in just about every facet of the game except for chin. Moicano, excellent at jiu-jitsu, volume, cardio. This is we considered him a title contender not long ago, and I believe he does have a lot of the skills and tools. Fights out of ATT. Moicano is going to be the pick, but at minus 365, I think that's a very wide. I think that's a wide line. He might look great up until he gets caught, but I'm going to be picking Moicano to win this fight. Next up, we have welterweights. This fight, who would have thought this fight would ever take place? Gilbert Burns taking on Damian Maia, two Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu phenoms who now meet in 2020. Gilbert Burns, 17-3 record. He is streaking. $9,000 in DraftKings, minus 188 favorite. Taking on a 42-year-old Damian Maia who has not shown his age. Maia, 7,200 plus 163 underdog, 28-9 record. Maia, remember when he broke onto the scene and came in as a jiu-jitsu fighter at middleweight, and then he developed a striking game. Watch the weigh-ins. Damian Maia is the much bigger guy. Gilbert Burns, though, his gas tank has been an issue in the past. I wonder if his gas tank is going to be tested in this fight. Burns has the more powerful striking. Maia has a solid one too. And I'm interested to see how things play out when they're fighting at range, because I have a hunch Maia comes in dialed in early in his fights. Burns, though, he's stated in interviews that he wants to test his skills, and he's not afraid to go to the ground with Maia. I want to see these two tangle on the ground. I don't think we're going to see a submission in this spot. I think we may see a bunch of stalemates, which could potentially lead to a low DraftKings score. I have a hunch in this fight, though, that the longer the fight goes, we're going to see Gilbert Burns start to pick it up in the latter rounds, because I think that the Gunnar Nelson fight, the Kunchenko fight, the Mike Davis fight, the OAM fight, I know he survived the Kunchenko fight late, and he had, I believe, leg kicks were starting to cost him. I don't think he's not going to have to worry about leg kicks in this fight, and I think the activity, he's been really working on that gas tank. So give me Gilbert Burns to win this fight. Shockingly, he got down to minus 130 at some stage in the game, but right now he's at minus 188 over at BetDSI. Let's see. So we're going to head to the main event of the evening, folks. We're here. All eyes on UFC Brasilia. Kevin Lee taking on Charles Oliveira. Thank goodness we waited until weigh-ins to make a determination on this fight, because Kevin Lee came in overweight at 158.5 pounds. He didn't look great on the scale, but he should have a massive size advantage in this spot against Charles Oliveira. This is a guy who came out and asked for Gregor Gillespie. Who does that? Now he's fighting Charles Oliveira. This is not an easy way back to the belt. Fought RDA before that. Fought Tony Ferguson. Charles Oliveira, 7,900 plus 125 underdog. Oliveira, submission machine fighting in Brazil. I honestly think that the entrance and his the lead up to his fights propels him, and really is a huge advantage for him when he's fighting in Brazil. Now he's going to be fighting in front of no one. And at 8,300, Kevin Lee, minus 145 favorite with a 1.5-inch reach advantage. I'm really interested to see how this fight plays out. Oliveira has had success recently with his stand-up, with his Muay Thai and his straight punches. I went back, all the way back, and I was watching his fights against a young Frankie Edgar. Was 31 years of age when he took on a 23-year-old De Bronx. And Charles Oliveira, he held his own in that fight. Granted, didn't win. That fight ended up going the distance. This fight, though, Kevin Lee, we saw how he fought against Barboza. I don't think this fight is going to go to a decision. Right now, fight does not go the distance, is at minus 370. At some point, one of these fighters is going to break. I like the under 2.5 when it was at minus 142-ish. This fight does not go the distance, open at, I believe, minus 245-ish. Kevin Lee he has so many tools. The bigger, stronger fighter who has the much heavier top game. It's going to be dangerous, though. I would not be playing a lot of Kevin Lee. You got to really consider that this fight is a closely lined fight here, but a major issue I have is the scales here. I think that Kevin Lee coming in heavier is a big advantage for him. Some fighters, the weight difference isn't that much of a factor, but for him, this is a guy who has fought at welterweight recently. Charles Oliveira was fighting at 145 pounds not long ago, and there is a chance that Kevin Lee goes out there and ragdolls Oliveira, but Oliveira is so dangerous. Give me Kevin Lee to win this fight by ground and pound. That's your main event of the evening. I want to thank everybody for tuning in today. I want to wish you the best of luck with your plays. You can follow me at betmma.tips, at MikesMMAPicks on Twitter, at Capertech. Also, in the near future, you'll want to check out MMA Odds Breaker, premium section. No plays up for me yet, but there are other plays available. I want to just pause for a second and say that we're thinking of everybody out there. I want everybody to stay safe and take care of themselves during this time. Thank MMA Oddsbreaker and BetDSI for hosting the podcast. Somber state of affairs, but go get what's yours, everyone. Enjoy the fights today.